Welcome to Zoe Stories. Heartbreak turned me into a woman. I never imagined heartbreak could feel like a physical weight pressing down on me, dragging me into a world I didn't know existed. A world of skirts, high heels, and lipstick. My name is Alex, a 24-year-old graphic designer living in the heart of a bustling city where neon lights never sleep and the streets hum with life even at midnight. To everyone else, I seemed like any other young professional, dedicated to my work, keeping late nights at the studio, and smiling through the exhaustion. But behind closed doors, I carried a secret, one I hadn't even fully understood myself until recently. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. A brush of silky fabric against my fingers at a thrift store, lingering longer than I should have on the feminine cut of a blouse, the way a pleated skirt swayed when I lifted it to examine it. It felt wrong. And yet, it felt right. That quiet thrill in my chest, the kind that makes your pulse spike and your stomach do tiny somersaults. I wasn't just curious. I was drawn to it. But I kept it hidden. Hidden from my friends, hidden from my colleagues, and most importantly, hidden from Isabella. Isabella. She was the center of my universe, the kind of girlfriend who makes you feel like your world is finally aligned. Dark, intelligent eyes, hair cascading in perfect waves, laughter that could pull you out of the deepest despair. We met in college, both of us studying design, both of us fighting through our insecurities. But while she was bold and fearless, I was cautious, always careful not to tip my hand too much, always hiding that side of me that wanted something different. Something soft, delicate, something undeniably feminine. Living together in our small apartment gave me glimpses of freedom, but only small ones. When Isabella went to her yoga classes or work trips, I sometimes found myself drawn to the closet she had so casually curated with blouses, skirts, and heels she never wore at home. I told myself it was just curiosity. But curiosity quickly became obsession, and obsession began to shape my identity in ways I hadn't anticipated. That night, everything changed. It wasn't a dramatic cinematic moment, no loud argument or shocking revelation, just heartbreak. Isabella had been distant for weeks, and when I confronted her, the truth hit me like a punch to the chest. She had been seeing someone else. The betrayal wasn't violent. It was quiet, cruel in its subtlety. The world as I knew it cracked, spilling all my control into the wind. I felt raw, exposed, and utterly unmoored. And in that moment of vulnerability, something inside me shifted. Something I had been denying, questioning, hiding, suddenly surged forward. I found myself standing in front of her closet again, fingertips grazing fabrics that now felt like lifelines. A pale pink blouse caught my eye first, soft against my hands. I hesitated, staring at it like it held answers I wasn't ready to face. Then the skirt, a navy pleated one she had never worn, dangling from the hanger, beckoning. My heart raced, a chaotic mix of fear and anticipation. The apartment was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator. Isabella's absence no longer felt like a void. It felt like an invitation. I whispered to myself, though my voice trembled. Just for tonight. Just to feel something. I had never imagined that words like those would define me. The first touch of the fabric against my skin was electric. Smooth, soft, impossibly delicate. My fingers traced the seam, and a thrill shot up my spine. My reflection in the mirror caught me by surprise. There was a vulnerability there, yes, but also a strange exhilaration. For the first time in weeks, I felt alive. The transformation didn't stop with clothes. I raided her makeup drawer. Lipsticks, eyeshadows, brushes, each tool unfamiliar yet intoxicating. Clumsily, I applied a light foundation, smudged mascara across my lashes, and felt the tension in my chest unravel. Each stroke of the brush was an act of rebellion against the pain of heartbreak, each layer of color a step toward discovering a side of me I had long ignored. By the time I slid into her heels, my reflection had changed entirely. The person staring back at me was still me, yet not me. Alex, softened and reshaped, vulnerable yet strangely empowered. It wasn't just the physical transformation that shook me. It was the emotional one. Standing there, legs slightly unsteady in heels, blouse clinging just right, skirt swaying gently as I moved, I realized that this wasn't mere escapism. This was exploration. This was freedom. And in that fragile moment, I understood that heartbreak had opened a door I could never close again. Yet fear lingered like a shadow. Isabella could return at any moment. What would she think if she saw me like this? Disgusted? Confused? Amused? The thought of being discovered both thrilled and terrified me. My pulse quickened at the possibility, a dangerous mix of excitement and dread. I felt like I was balancing on the edge of a knife, suspended between my desire to embrace this new self and my need to hide it from the world. As the night deepened, I moved through the apartment cautiously, touching the surfaces as if testing whether the world could still contain me in my new skin. I tried walking, adjusting to the heels, feeling the sway of the skirt, the weight of a wig I had found tucked away in her drawer. Every reflection I caught, from the shiny countertop to the darkened window, felt like a secret conversation with a side of me I had never allowed to speak. That night, Alex became someone else entirely, yet the truth remained. Underneath the skirts, the makeup, the carefully chosen heels, I was still me. But the heartbreak had changed me, reshaped me, and unveiled a part of my soul that I could no longer ignore. The night stretched endlessly, the city's hum echoing my heartbeat, and I realized that whatever came next, I could never go back to who I was before. And so, standing there in front of the mirror, the reflection both terrifying and liberating, I whispered into the darkness, maybe this is who I was always meant to be. Little did I know, that night would mark the beginning of a transformation far more profound than I could have ever imagined, one that would test my courage, my identity, and my heart in ways I never saw coming. The night stretched on, and with every tick of the clock, I felt the apartment shift from a familiar space into something entirely new, a stage for a self I had barely dared to imagine. Shadows danced across the walls in the glow of the city lights filtering through the blinds, reflecting off the polished floor like a quiet audience observing my secret performance. My heartbeat thumped in sync with the distant hum of traffic, a rhythm that seemed to echo the forbidden exhilaration swirling inside me. I had slipped fully into Isabella's blouse and skirt, the fabric clinging to my skin in a way that made me acutely aware of every movement. The heels were a challenge. I stumbled slightly as I navigated the narrow living room, each careful step teaching me a balance I had never mastered. Yet, despite the awkwardness, I couldn't deny the pleasure it brought. The sway of the skirt, the subtle lift of the blouse around my shoulders, it felt liberating. And yet it also terrified me. What would happen if someone saw me like this? The thought of being caught tightened my chest and quickened my pulse, but that fear mingled strangely with excitement, like a secret thrill that only I could experience. I moved toward the mirror, hesitant yet drawn as if the reflection itself had the power to define me. The face staring back was undeniably mine, but softened, reshaped by the blush of powder, the carefully applied mascara, and the faint sheen of lip gloss. My jawline, normally sharp, seemed gentler, almost vulnerable. I touched my cheeks, feeling the texture of the makeup, the subtle transformation it had wrought. There was a power in this act, a quiet rebellion against the heartbreak that had shattered me hours ago. I wasn't just trying on clothes or experimenting with appearance. I was discovering a part of myself that had been buried under years of fear, doubt, and societal expectation. As I adjusted the hem of the skirt, my mind wandered back to Isabella. Her absence was a relief, a protective bubble that allowed me to explore without judgment, but it also carried the sting of betrayal. The idea that she could be out there, laughing with someone else, loving someone else, while I navigated this delicate balance between shame and desire, was almost unbearable. And yet, in this new identity, I felt a strange sense of control, a power that had nothing to do with her, nothing to do with the heartbreak, and everything to do with me. The apartment grew quieter, the city noises dimming behind the thick glass of the windows. I felt the pull of solitude, the freedom it granted, and my curiosity deepened. There were items I had never dared touch before: a string of pearls tucked into a jewelry box, a small clutch purse that smelled faintly of Isabella's perfume, a pair of tights so sheer they seemed to hum against my skin. My fingers hovered over each item, tentative at first, then eager, as though each object carried a fragment of the self I was beginning to uncover. Slipping on the pearls, I felt a shiver run down my spine, not from cold, but from the sudden awareness that I was fully stepping into a persona that was both thrilling and terrifying. The tights, snug against my legs, added a weight I had never carried before, yet somehow grounded me, connecting my physical body to this new identity. The clutch in my hand, empty yet potent, felt symbolic, like a container for secrets too delicate to be shared with the world. I experimented with walking, adjusting the heels with each step, trying to mimic the casual elegance I had seen Isabella exhibit countless times. Each movement demanded attention, focus, and patience, a challenge that heightened my awareness of every sensation. The fabric against my skin, the slight wobble of the heels, the subtle scent of her perfume lingering on the clothes, it all merged into a sensory cocktail that left me both dizzy and elated. Yet the thrill was tempered by unease. The apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a stage, and every creak of the floor, every distant honk from the street, felt like a potential alarm. I paused by the living room window, peering out at the glowing skyline, imagining Isabella returning unexpectedly or a neighbor glancing through the blinds. The fear of discovery surged through me, raw and immediate, yet it didn't diminish my resolve. It sharpened it. I was navigating a tightrope between secrecy and self-expression, and each careful, deliberate step made me feel alive in a way I hadn't before. Hours passed, though I had no sense of time. I became absorbed in the minutiae of my transformation: the angle of the blush, the curl of the lashes, the gentle tug of the skirt at my waist. My reflections seemed to shift with me, responding to my adjustments, encouraging me, teasing me. There was a strange intimacy in that mirror, the kind that feels like a dialogue between who you are and who you are becoming. I whispered to myself, "This is me. This is what I've been hiding." The words trembled on my lips, both confession and affirmation. Then, almost instinctively, I moved to the small chair in the corner, curling my legs beneath me in the oversized blouse, the heels precariously perched on the hardwood floor. The vulnerability of the posture, combined with the delicate elegance of my attire, made me feel exposed in a way that was equal parts frightening and thrilling. I was alone, yet intensely conscious of my dual existence: Alex, the man shattered by heartbreak, and the soft, feminine persona emerging in the reflection before me. For the first time since Isabella left, I felt something resembling peace. Not happiness, not yet, but a fragile equilibrium, a sense that I had stumbled upon a truth that was mine alone. The skirts, the makeup, the delicate movements, they were not mere tools of disguise. They were a bridge, connecting my pain to something beautiful, transforming heartbreak into self-discovery. And though fear lingered, and though the threat of discovery loomed like a shadow at the edge of the room, I couldn't bring myself to step back. I was on the cusp of something irreversible, and a part of me reveled in the uncertainty. Little did I know, the nights ahead would challenge every assumption I had about identity, trust, and desire. Each moment in heels, each stroke of makeup, would be a test, a delicate dance between thrill and danger, vulnerability and empowerment. And as I sat there, trembling slightly yet brimming with a strange confidence, I realized this was only the beginning. The heartbreak had opened a door I could never close, and beyond it lay a path I was only beginning to explore. I had thought I understood what it meant to be alone, to taste freedom. But that night, I discovered something far more complicated. Solitude can be both liberating and haunting. The city outside my window shimmered with life, distant laughter and car horns filtering in like reminders of a world I was momentarily detached from. Inside, the apartment became a labyrinth of shadows and self-discovery. Each corner held a reflection, each mirror a silent witness to the version of me I had never allowed to exist. I moved toward Isabella's vanity, the surface gleaming under the soft lamplight, reflecting the pale glow of the city's skyline. Her collection of makeup, once mundane, now felt like a treasure trove of transformation, each lipstick and brush a key to unlocking a side of me I had denied for too long. I picked up a soft pink lipstick, hesitating only for a moment before pressing it to my lips. The sensation was electric, a tingle that spread across my body, pulling my attention to the subtle changes that had begun in my reflection. Standing there, I realized that the transformation was no longer just physical. My heartbeat had slowed, a gentle rhythm replacing the earlier frantic pulse. The vulnerability I had felt initially had evolved into a strange confidence. Every sway of the skirt, every tilt of the heels, made me feel as if I were inhabiting a new body entirely, yet it was still undeniably me. There was power in that duality, a tension that pulled me forward even as fear lingered at the edges of my consciousness. And then came the first real thrill, the danger of discovery. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, startling me. I froze, my reflection frozen with me. It was a notification from Isabella, a message I hadn't expected. Running late tonight. Don't wait up. Relief washed over me, but beneath it lingered a strange, guilty excitement. The thought that I could be discovered at any second, that she could walk in and catch me, sent a shiver down my spine. It was thrilling, intoxicating, and terrifying all at once. I couldn't resist testing the limits. Moving slowly, deliberately, I began to explore the apartment as if it were an entirely new world. Each step in heels was a study in balance, each glance in a reflective surface a study in identity. My fingers brushed the edge of a delicate scarf, the texture smooth against my skin, and I wrapped it loosely around my neck, marveling at how it transformed the silhouette of my body. The small details, the way a piece of jewelry caught the light, the subtle rustle of fabric, felt monumental. I paused at the living room mirror, twisting slightly to catch my reflection from different angles. The person staring back at me was undeniably feminine now, a soft, elegant version of myself I had never allowed to exist. And yet, beneath that exterior, I could still see Alex, the man who had loved and lost, the man trembling with uncertainty and excitement. The contrast was almost surreal, like looking at two versions of yourself at once, one vulnerable, one daring. Curiosity overtook caution. I moved toward Isabella's bedroom, careful to keep my heels silent against the carpeted floor. Inside, her wardrobe unfolded like a world of endless possibilities. Dresses, skirts, blouses, each hung perfectly, inviting exploration. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for a navy dress I had admired from afar but never dared touch. Sliding it over my head, I felt the fabric mold to my body, accentuating curves I had only dreamed of possessing. As I stood there, examining myself in the full-length mirror, I realized how profoundly different I felt. The heartbreak from earlier seemed to recede into the background, replaced by a strange euphoria. I was no longer just Alex. I was someone daring, bold, and alive in a way I had never imagined. Each glance in the mirror, each adjustment of fabric, felt like a declaration. I exist, even if only in this secret, delicate form. But the thrill of freedom carried its own tension. I moved toward the window, peering out at the street below. The thought of anyone seeing me, the possibility of being caught, heightened every sensation. My pulse raced, and I felt a tremor of fear that was inseparable from excitement. There was a delicious danger in the secrecy, a silent acknowledgement that what I was doing was forbidden yet irresistible. In that moment, I realized something crucial. Crossdressing was no longer just about curiosity or escapism. It was about power. The power to explore identity, to claim space for myself, and to navigate a world that had, until now, seemed rigid and constraining. Every movement, every adjustment, every careful step in heels was a small rebellion, a way of asserting my right to exist in multiple forms simultaneously. Yet, as the night deepened, I could feel a tension building, subtle but insistent. The apartment, once a sanctuary, began to feel like a stage. The shadows seemed to watch, and every sound, the distant wail of a siren, the faint creak of the radiator, felt amplified. I realized that this exploration, this thrill, came with stakes higher than I had imagined. One wrong sound, one unexpected knock, and the fragile bubble of freedom could shatter. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. The heels, the dress, the makeup, it was all part of a fragile balance between exhilaration and fear. I knew I was teetering on the edge, but I couldn't turn back. The transformation had begun in my mind, then my body, and now it had taken root in my soul. The night was mine, fleeting and precious, and I intended to savor every second before reality intruded. Then, almost instinctively, I whispered to my reflection, "If I'm caught, I'll regret it, but if I'm not, I'll never forget it." The words were both a warning and a promise, capturing the paradox of this first encounter with my new self. And in that whispered admission, I understood that heartbreak had done more than wound me. It had cracked open a door, inviting me to step into a world of thrill, danger, and self-discovery I had never dared imagine. The thrill of solitude had carried me far, but suddenly, the apartment felt smaller, almost claustrophobic. Every shadow seemed to stretch longer, every faint sound louder than before. I had been so absorbed in my reflection, in the soft sway of the skirt and the unfamiliar weight of the heels, that I hadn't noticed the ticking of the wall clock grow louder, each second hammering into my chest. My pulse quickened, not from excitement alone, but from the creeping realization that I was not entirely safe in this experiment. It started with a knock, a soft, hesitant tap at the door that made my heart leap into my throat. My first instinct was to freeze, barely breathing. The heels clicked against the hardwood as I tiptoed toward the living room, clutching Isabella's clutch like a shield. "It's probably a neighbor," I whispered to myself, though the sound of my own voice felt absurdly loud in the tense silence. Each step was deliberate, each sway of the skirt making me painfully aware of my delicate, precarious balance. The knock came again, slightly firmer this time. Panic surged through me. My reflection in the nearby mirror caught my eye, and for a moment, I didn't recognize the soft, elegant figure staring back. The lips glistened with pink gloss, eyes wide with fear and anticipation, and the posture, so different from the slouched Alex, was rigid, defensive, yet undeniably feminine. I realized, in that instant, how far I had stepped into this new identity, and the thought both thrilled and terrified me. I crept to the door, fingers trembling as I peered through the peephole. No one. Only the dimly lit hallway of the apartment complex, empty and silent. I exhaled slowly, relief washing over me, but the tension remained. The incident, minor as it was, had amplified the stakes. I was no longer just exploring. I was performing under the invisible gaze of potential discovery. The adrenaline coursing through me mingled with the thrill of my feminine self, creating a cocktail of fear and desire I had never experienced before. Shaking, I retreated back to the bedroom, adjusting the skirt and smoothing the blouse over my shoulders. The sensation of fabric against skin now carried a weight beyond comfort or curiosity. It was armor, a shield against vulnerability, yet simultaneously a marker of exposure. I moved deliberately, testing the balance of the heels as I walked to the window. The city lights sparkled below, each one a tiny reminder of the vastness outside and the isolation within. I realized how fragile this moment was. One unexpected return, one knock too many, could unravel everything. I decided to push further. If fear was part of this new identity, then testing it would cement my transformation. I rummaged through Isabella's drawers, finding items I had never dared touch before. A pair of satin gloves, sheer stockings, delicate earrings. Each piece I added to my outfit heightened both the elegance and the danger. I adorned myself with meticulous care, each action deliberate, each touch a mix of reverence and thrill. When I finally stood fully transformed, the person in the mirror was almost unrecognizable. Alex, in essence, yet an entirely different, softer, more daring version.
But the risk was not just imagined.
A sudden sound, a creak from the apartment above, a distant cough, made me freeze in place. My pulse spiked, heart hammering against my ribs, as if the room itself was conspiring to reveal me. I clutched the clutch tighter, the weight of secrecy pressing down like an invisible hand. My mind raced through scenarios. Isabella returning early, a neighbor seeing through the blinds, a friend dropping by unexpectedly. Each possibility was a needle prick of anxiety, yet I could feel the thrill underneath it all. I was walking a razor's edge, suspended between danger and ecstasy. I moved to the living room sofa, perching delicately with legs crossed, heels sinking slightly into the carpet. The mirror across the room reflected me from head to toe, and I studied my own reflection with newfound fascination. Each adjustment of hair or clothing felt monumental, a declaration of a self I had long suppressed. The heartbreak that had driven me into this evening seemed both distant and acute. Distant because I had been absorbed in this new identity, acute because every risk reminded me of the fragility of my circumstances. Then came a deeper emotional stir. I realized that this wasn't just about thrill or escapism. The reflection staring back was more than makeup and fabric. It was a mirror of my desires, vulnerabilities, and courage. I felt a strange mix of empowerment and fragility, like a tightrope walker balanced precariously over a chasm. The heels, once a novelty, now demanded my full attention. Each careful step, each sway, became a meditation on balance, risk, and the delicate dance of identity. I glanced at Isabella's phone on the table, forgotten in my initial exploration. Curiosity overcame caution, and I picked it up, fingering the screen, pretending not to notice the faint reflection of my transformed self in the glossy surface. I found messages I hadn't seen, photos, snippets of conversations that reminded me sharply of the life I had temporarily left behind. The juxtaposition of my new self against the remnants of my old relationship made my chest ache, a mixture of longing, loss, and a burgeoning desire to redefine what it meant to be me. Suddenly, the thrill of the heels and the fabric faded slightly, replaced by a stark awareness. This transformation was a double-edged sword. It was exhilarating, liberating, and intoxicating, but the danger of exposure made every movement, every choice, heavy with consequence. I realized that tonight was more than experimentation. It was a test of courage, identity, and self-acceptance. And as I sat there, poised and trembling, I understood that the night had only just begun, and the challenges ahead would be far more intense than a simple knock at the door. By now, the apartment had completely transformed in my mind. What had once been a simple living space was now a private stage for a performance I had never rehearsed. Shadows cast by the city lights seemed to move with me, emphasizing every step, every subtle sway of my skirt. The heels, once awkward and clumsy, now allowed me to glide almost effortlessly, each movement deliberate and precise. Yet, beneath the growing confidence, anxiety simmered like a slow-burning ember, reminding me that I was teetering on the edge of discovery. Curiosity propelled me further. I had explored blouses, skirts, and shoes, but there were other elements of Isabella's wardrobe I had avoided: lingerie, delicate accessories, and the kind of dresses that demanded elegance and poise. I opened a drawer hesitantly, revealing a soft silk camisole and matching tights. My fingers hovered, almost afraid to touch them, but the lure was irresistible. Sliding the camisole over my shoulders, I marveled at how the fabric clung softly to my chest, reshaping my silhouette in ways I had only ever imagined. The tights followed, hugging my legs like a second skin, adding an unfamiliar weight that somehow made me feel taller, more confident, yet acutely exposed. I stood before the mirror, examining every detail. The reflection was mesmerizing. The combination of blouse, skirt, camisole, and tights created a layered elegance I had never thought possible for myself. My hair fell over my shoulders in soft waves, and the light caught the gloss on my lips, making them look fuller, softer. I couldn't help but reach out, tracing the curve of my jawline and the smoothness of my cheeks. The person staring back was undeniably me, yet transformed, Alex, softened and reborn, vulnerable yet daring. But the exhilaration carried a growing tension. Every sound, the hum of the refrigerator, a distant siren, the occasional car horn, seemed amplified, each one a reminder that this fragile bubble of freedom could burst at any moment. I moved cautiously toward the living room, heels clicking softly against the floor, aware of how each step might betray me if someone were watching. The city outside continued its endless pulse, indifferent to my private drama unfolding within. The thrill of being caught mingled with an unexpected vulnerability. I realized I was not only performing for myself, but for the mirror, for the reflection that seemed to hold a silent judgment. Each pose, each careful adjustment of skirt or blouse, felt like a negotiation between fear and desire, a conversation I was having with the deepest corners of my identity. The duality was intoxicating. Alex, the man shaped by heartbreak, and the delicate, daring persona I was embracing in stolen solitude. I reached for a wig I had discovered tucked behind Isabella's wardrobe, the curls soft and inviting. Placing it gently over my head, I adjusted it to frame my face, and suddenly my reflection became almost unrecognizable. The combination of hair, makeup, and clothing created a person I had long fantasized about but never dared to inhabit. A thrill surged through me, accompanied by a pang of fear. Was this who I truly wanted to be, or was it just an escape from pain? The question lingered, unanswered, as I experimented with movement, watching how the fabric and hair swayed with each motion. Then came the real test of agility and courage. I had noticed a high-backed chair near the window, perfect for posing, perfect for pretending the city lights were a stage spotlight. With careful precision, I climbed onto it, balancing on heels, skirt adjusted just right. The reflection from the window glass merged with the city skyline, creating an almost cinematic image. I felt powerful, yet exposed, every muscle alert to potential disaster. One misstep could send me sprawling, and the thought of Isabella returning, or a neighbor seeing me, tightened the tension like a vice. The thrill of danger mingled with an unexpected self-awareness. I ran my hands along the fabric of the skirt, the smooth silk of the camisole, the delicate tights against my legs. Each sensation was heightened, electric, reminding me of the vulnerability and power that coexist in this delicate balancing act. I realized that the transformation wasn't just about clothing or appearance. It was a profound exploration of self, a reclamation of something lost in the heartbreak that had brought me to this point. Yet even as confidence grew, anxiety lurked. I imagined Isabella walking through the door at any moment, her expression a mix of confusion, disbelief, and perhaps amusement. The thought both terrified and thrilled me. I was aware that this secret identity, however liberating, carried risks I had never faced before. My pulse quickened, a tangible reminder of the stakes involved, but I refused to retreat. This was my moment, fragile and fleeting, and I intended to explore it fully before reality intruded. To ground myself, I practiced subtle movements, crossing legs, tilting my head, adjusting the wig, shifting weight from heel to heel. Each action was deliberate, refining the persona I was creating in tandem with my reflection. I felt the tension in my body dissolve slightly with every pose, replaced by a quiet, almost meditative focus. The heels, once instruments of instability, had become extensions of my posture, shaping the way I carried myself, enhancing both vulnerability and grace. By the time the city's hum seemed to fade into background, I had achieved a delicate balance between fear and exhilaration, exposure and power. I stood before the window once more, the reflection merging with the skyline, a visual reminder of the dual life I was beginning to inhabit. I whispered softly to my reflection, "This is who I can be, even if only tonight." The words trembled on my lips, acknowledgement and promise intertwined, capturing the tension, thrill, and self-discovery that defined this fragile, transformative night. The night air was cool against my skin as I stepped onto the balcony, the city sprawling beneath me like a glittering ocean of lights. I took a shaky breath, heels clicking against the cold metal floor, and felt a thrill I hadn't expected. The breeze teased the hem of my skirt and played with my hair, reminding me how fragile and exhilarating this moment was. Out here, away from the confined space of walls, my reflection was no longer limited to mirrors. It was in the way the streetlights caught the curves of my body, in the way the wind lifted the strands of hair framing my face. I had crossed a threshold. No longer was this a secret experiment hidden behind closed doors. Being out here, even on a tiny balcony high above the city, felt like a daring proclamation of a self I was only beginning to understand. My heart raced, not just from the heights, but from the intoxicating mix of fear and excitement. Each step along the narrow ledge felt like a gamble, and yet the thrill pushed me forward. I was learning that transformation wasn't just about clothes or makeup. It was about movement, posture, and claiming space in a world that had never encouraged me to be delicate, to be soft, to be seen. I glanced at my reflection in the glass of the balcony door. The light of the street below illuminated my features differently than any indoor lamp could, highlighting the contours of my face and the curve of my lips painted in soft pink. The wig caught the wind perfectly, falling in loose curls over my shoulders. My blouse and skirt clung just right, the tights giving my legs a sheen that felt almost unreal. I felt exposed, yes, but also powerful. The vulnerability of being outside, visible in some small way to the world below, sharpened every sensation. Suddenly, I heard footsteps on the stairwell of the building next door. My pulse spiked. I froze mid-step, heels perched precariously on the edge of the balcony, gripping the railing like it could anchor me against a storm of my own excitement and terror. The sound faded, but the tension lingered, an invisible force tightening around my chest. Each heartbeat echoed loudly in my ears, a reminder that being seen, even accidentally, could ruin everything. And yet, the thrill of danger was addictive. I realized that the risk made the transformation feel even more real, every swish of the skirt and delicate adjustment of the blouse heightened by the possibility of exposure. I stepped back from the railing, carefully, testing my balance, and noticed a small prop I had brought along, a clutch Isabella had left behind. Holding it in my hands, I felt a symbolic weight. It was more than just a bag. It was a secret, a vessel carrying my hidden identity into this moment. I adjusted it over my shoulder, practiced tilting my head, and experimented with the sway of my hips as I walked along the balcony. Each movement was deliberate, each shift a test of grace and confidence. The city below had become my audience, and I reveled in the performance, despite the undercurrent of fear. The wind picked up suddenly, tugging at my skirt and teasing the wig. I laughed softly, a sound that surprised me with its lightness. It was the first time I felt that playful, almost mischievous part of my new self emerge. The skirt twirled slightly as I moved, the fabric dancing in the breeze, and I realized that this was no longer a private experiment. This was a declaration, a statement that Alex, shaped by heartbreak, was discovering someone daring, delicate, and undeniably alive. A flicker of movement below caught my eye, a silhouette crossing the street. I froze, every muscle tense, heels digging into the metal floor for stability. For a fleeting moment, I imagined recognition, judgment, exposure. But the figure passed without incident, disappearing into the shadows. My shoulders slumped with relief, but the encounter had already etched a deeper awareness into my mind. This identity I was exploring was intoxicating, but it came with stakes. Every decision, every step, was a negotiation between desire and danger. I leaned lightly against the railing, letting the wind play with my hair, and felt an unexpected clarity. The heartbreak that had brought me here had cracked open a door I could never close. This balcony, these lights, this rush of wind against my legs, everything reinforced a truth I had been denying. Crossdressing wasn't just an escape or curiosity. It was a form of expression, a reclamation of a part of me that had been silenced, a chance to inhabit a self that was softer, more daring, and alive in ways Alex had never dared. Then, almost instinctively, I spoke aloud, voice trembling slightly. If I can survive this night, maybe I can survive anything. The words carried both a warning and a promise. The city below, indifferent to my private revelation, continued its endless rhythm, yet in that suspended moment, I understood the fragile power of self-discovery. The heels, the skirt, the blouse, the wig, they were more than clothes. They were a bridge between heartbreak and transformation, fear and empowerment, secrecy and freedom. The night stretched endlessly, but in the cool air and glittering lights, I felt a pulse of anticipation for what was to come. Every sense was heightened, every breath a reminder that the next steps, both literal and emotional, would carry even greater stakes. The transformation was no longer a secret experiment. It was a challenge, a thrill, and a prelude to a confrontation that would test every facet of my courage and identity. The city streets were alive with movement, neon lights flickering across slick pavement from a recent drizzle. I had left the balcony behind, stepping into the night with a thrill that made every nerve tingle. The heels clicked against the wet sidewalk, each step echoing in the quiet alleyways. I felt exposed yet exhilarated, the thrill of being seen, or almost seen, coursing through me like electricity. Every glance from a passerby, every reflection in a shop window made my heart pound. Was I imagining recognition, or did someone truly notice me? The line between fear and excitement blurred. I had chosen a secluded cafe as my destination, a place I had visited only in daylight with Isabella. Tonight, the dim lights and scattered patrons felt like an opportunity to inhabit my new persona fully, but the outside world introduced a raw unpredictability. The skirt swished around my thighs as I navigated the narrow pathway, and my pulse raced with every glance from strangers. Each movement in the heels demanded precision. One slip could shatter this fragile confidence I had been building all night. Inside, the cafe was sparsely populated, the hum of soft music blending with the occasional clink of cutlery. I slid into a corner booth, adjusting my wig and smoothing the blouse, trying to appear casual while my pulse screamed that this was anything but ordinary. The reflection in the window across from me offered a new mirror, one shaped not by careful staging, but by the randomness of the outside world. For the first time, I realized my transformation had consequences beyond private curiosity. The world could see, judge, react. Then, it happened, a familiar voice, low and teasing, that made my stomach lurch. Well, look who decided to step out in style. I froze. My heart skipped. Isabella was leaning against the doorway, a mischievous smirk dancing across her lips. She hadn't expected me to be out here, in public, fully transformed. Her eyes scanned me from head to toe, the skirt, the blouse, the heels, the wig. The blush on my cheeks wasn't from the wind. It was raw, burning embarrassment mixed with a shocking thrill. What are you doing here? I stammered, unsure whether to hide, explain, or run. My voice wavered between Alex and the persona I had painstakingly built. You look amazing, she said softly, but with a sharp edge that hinted at mischief. I didn't expect this. I wanted a surprise, but you've taken it somewhere entirely different. Every word she spoke heightened the tension. I realized the night had escalated beyond experimentation. This was no longer about personal exploration alone. It had become a test of courage, identity, and the fragile balance between secrecy and exposure. The cafe's dim lights, the random patrons, and the wet streets outside now felt like a stage where every step, every glance, could spark revelation. Isabella leaned closer, lowering her voice. I almost didn't recognize you at first, but there's something in your eyes. Something daring, alive. Tell me, are you enjoying this? I swallowed hard, unable to deny the truth. The heels, the skirt, the makeup, it was intoxicating. The thrill of the transformation was deeper than I had imagined, but the stakes were higher than ever. A wrong movement, a slip of the wig, a tilt of the skirt, and everything could collapse. And yet, beneath the fear, There was a surge of power. I was navigating the dangerous balance between vulnerability and strength, and for the first time, I felt a strange pride in the daring act itself. Isabella's smirk widened, sensing the tension, the mixture of fear and thrill. "You're walking a fine line tonight," she murmured. "I wonder, will you survive it, or will it unravel?" The challenge was clear. The public setting, the risk of recognition, and the sharp edge of her words forced me into a new level of awareness. Every muscle tensed, every heartbeat amplified, and my movements became deliberate, careful, and charged with an electric energy I had never felt before. I realized that this was more than a test of balance and heels. It was a test of identity, courage, and the ability to embrace exposure without collapsing into fear. Outside, rain began to fall lightly, soft droplets tapping against the cafe windows. I could feel the slick streets below, the distant reflections in puddles adding another layer to my transformation. Each moment became a negotiation between self-expression and the danger of being seen. The heels, the skirt, the blouse, they were no longer just clothing. They were tools of suspense, props in a high-stakes game that was unfolding under the indifferent gaze of the city. I glanced back at Isabella, who seemed to be silently daring me to push further, to explore the persona I had begun to inhabit fully. Every glance, every whispered word, every teasing smirk increased the tension. The city outside, the cafe around us, and the unknown variables of strangers and chance combined to form a crucible, testing my courage, my identity, and the strength of the transformation I had embraced in secrecy. And in that charged moment, standing on the precipice of exposure, I realized the night had moved far beyond private curiosity. This was public, raw, and unyielding. The heartbreak that had sparked my first transformation had led me to a confrontation with self, with desire, and with the thrill of risk. And as Isabella leaned closer, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of amusement and challenge, I understood that the real test, the real climax of fear, desire, and transformation, was just beginning. The cafe's dim light suddenly felt oppressive, as if the walls themselves were conspiring to expose me. My pulse raced uncontrollably, each heartbeat echoing in my ears like a drum of warning. I could feel the weight of every gaze from other patrons. Even if most were oblivious, my imagination magnified each glance into a potential threat. Isabella, leaning against the edge of the booth, seemed almost predatory in her amusement, as if she could sense the trembling vulnerability beneath my composed exterior. I shifted nervously in my seat, the heels pressing against my toes through the polished fabric. Every movement carried consequence. One wrong gesture, one slip of the wig, and my delicate persona could unravel in front of a public audience. I could almost feel the air thickening around me, charged with the tension of imminent revelation. Then it happened. The cafe door swung open with a sharp gust of wind, and a familiar figure stepped in, my co-worker, Mark, the last person I expected to encounter tonight. His eyes scanned the room lazily, then locked onto me, widening in unmistakable recognition. My chest tightened as adrenaline surged, my mind scrambling for a strategy. Should I pretend? Hide?
Retreat?
Every option felt dangerous. Every choice a potential catastrophe. Mark approached, smiling casually but with an unmistakable spark of curiosity in his eyes. "Hey, Alex." His voice carried a question that demanded an answer, the kind of exposure I had been dreading. I froze, caught mid-thought, my reflection in the window next to me almost mocking my hesitation. The heels, the skirt, the blouse, they suddenly felt like armor and prison simultaneously, making me acutely aware of the precariousness of my situation. I forced a laugh, the sound higher than usual, trying to mask the fear that coursed through me. Yeah, just trying something new," I muttered, voice shaky but attempting composure. Every syllable felt amplified, each one a negotiation with my vulnerability. Mark's eyes flickered with surprise, curiosity, and perhaps amusement. He tilted his head, examining me as if trying to reconcile this transformed version of me with the co-worker he knew. Isabella's smirk widened across the booth, clearly relishing the drama unfolding. "I see you've met someone new," she teased lightly, her words sharp with playful challenge. My stomach twisted. Her presence amplified every sense of danger, every heartbeat, every minor tremor in my body. The stakes were no longer theoretical, they were tangible, immediate, and public. Mark, seemingly uncertain, took a cautious step closer. "You look different," he said slowly, studying the reflection of my heels in the polished floor. "Is that Alex?" His tone held a mixture of disbelief and curiosity, a precarious tightrope I had to navigate without collapsing. My mind raced, searching for a plausible explanation that would maintain the delicate balance of secrecy and revelation. I swallowed hard, adjusting the wig and smoothing the blouse. "Yeah, just experimenting," I said, the words trembling on my lips. The casualness was a lie, a fragile attempt to project normalcy in a situation that was anything but normal. Every subtle sway of the skirt, every tilt of the head, carried meaning I couldn't fully control, yet which Mark seemed to notice with unnerving acuity. Isabella leaned forward slightly, her gaze locked onto mine, a silent dare in her eyes. "Careful," she whispered softly, though everyone in the booth could not hear. The words were a thrill and a warning, a reminder that tonight, every action carried consequences far beyond my imagination. I realized then that the night had evolved into something more dangerous and intoxicating than I had anticipated. The delicate dance of exposure, desire, and transformation had entered the public stage, and there was no turning back. Mark, still examining me, took another step. I didn't know you were into this kind of thing," he said slowly, his tone hanging in the air like a question with multiple answers. The implication struck me like lightning. He was beginning to see me, not just the exterior transformation, but something deeper, something raw. Panic mingled with exhilaration. If he knew, would it ruin everything? And yet, part of me relished the acknowledgement, the silent recognition that my transformation carried power. I forced a nervous laugh again, tugging the clutch closer to my body. "Yet, just exploring," I repeated, trying to sound casual, though every word was a battle against trembling lips and pounding heart. Isabella's eyes sparkled with amusement, clearly enjoying the tension, the way every syllable seemed to balance on the knife edge of disaster. The rain outside intensified, drumming against the windows in a staccato rhythm that mirrored my rising pulse. Every drop seemed amplified, a reminder that this moment was fleeting, fragile, and charged with consequence. My gaze darted between Mark and Isabella, calculating, evaluating, strategizing, each motion critical to maintaining my precarious balance between revelation and secrecy. Mark tilted his head, curiosity giving way to intrigue. "Well, you're pulling it off," he said finally, his voice softening slightly. Relief washed through me, but the tension did not abate. I realized that surviving this encounter was not the end. It was the beginning of a more intricate, emotionally charged dance of exposure, identity, and suspense. The night, I understood, had only just escalated, and every step forward would demand courage, precision, and a willingness to confront both fear and desire simultaneously. The night had grown colder, the wind whipping through the streets, carrying the smell of wet asphalt and distant food stalls. I had managed to survive Mark's unexpected appearance, my body still trembling from the adrenaline. I thought the tension would ease once I left the cafe, but the city had other plans. A sudden shout rang out from across the street. Two teenagers on motorbikes screeched to a halt near the corner, laughing loudly, clearly causing a commotion. I froze mid-step, heels digging into the slick pavement. The skirt clung uncomfortably now, wet from the drizzle, and the wind tugged at the wig, making it shift on my head. Every detail of my transformation, from the delicate blouse to the tight stockings, felt like it could betray me at any moment. One of the teenagers looked directly at me, smirking. "Whoa, wait, is that?" His voice trailed off, and my stomach dropped. I realized I was fully exposed in the open street, no walls, no hiding places, Just the neon glow of the city reflecting on wet streets and the curious gaze of strangers. My heart pounded like a drum, and I could feel the familiar cocktail of fear, thrill, and embarrassment surge through me. Isabella, sensing my tension, stepped closer. Her presence was both a shield and a challenge, her fingers brushing my arm subtly, grounding me while simultaneously daring me to confront the chaos. "Stay calm," she whispered, her voice low but firm. "You can handle this." I nodded, trying to steady my trembling hands. The clutch in my grip felt heavier than ever, a symbol of both secrecy and survival. The teenagers laughed again, approaching slowly. One of them called out, "Hey, are you really dressed like that? What's going on?" My mind raced. I could run, but the heels made every step precarious. I could hide, but there was no immediate cover. And worst of all, Mark had left the cafe just minutes ago, meaning this encounter could draw attention from someone who knew me. I forced a laugh, high-pitched but controlled. "Yeah, it's a thing," I stammered, trying to sound casual while every fiber of my being screamed panic. My reflection in the rain-slicked windows across the street showed the delicate curve of my skirt, the soft wig framing my face, the subtle shimmer of makeup glistening under neon light. It was a perfect reflection of vulnerability, and yet there was something thrilling about standing here, in public, fully transformed. One of the teenagers stepped closer, squinting. "You're brave or crazy. Not sure which." The words hit me like a lightning bolt, a mixture of mockery and awe. I realized that the perception of strength and fragility was intertwined in this moment. Every step, every sway of the hips, every adjustment of the wig became an act of defiance and expression simultaneously. Suddenly, a car sped by, splashing water onto the sidewalk. I yelped as the cold droplets soaked my stockings and skirt, clinging to my legs and making each movement slippery. The wind tugged harder at the wig, threatening to reveal the careful disguise I had spent hours perfecting. Panic surged, but Isabella's hand on my back steadied me. "You've got this," she murmured, a spark of challenge in her eyes. I realized then that this was the crucible of my transformation. The heartbreak that had pushed me into crossdressing had led me to a moment of raw exposure, and every threat, real or imagined, was a test of courage. The combination of public scrutiny, physical discomfort, and emotional intensity was unlike anything I had experienced before. Yet, within that tension, I felt an exhilarating clarity. I was alive, daring, and undeniably present. The teenagers, sensing no immediate retreat, lingered for a moment longer, then laughed and moved on, leaving me trembling but victorious. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement, highlighting the subtle curves of my skirt, the shimmer of my blouse, the delicate wig now slightly askew. I adjusted it quickly, hands shaking, and realized that every obstacle I faced had only cemented the transformation further. Isabella smiled, a mix of pride and challenge.
"See?
"You can handle it," she whispered, her eyes glinting with mischief. "But the night isn't over." Her words carried weight, a reminder that tonight would test me further, physically, emotionally, and socially. I nodded, clutching the bag tightly, feeling both empowered and vulnerable. The heels, wet and slippery, reminded me of every risk I had taken, every precarious balance I had maintained, and every thrill I had embraced. As we walked further down the neon-lit streets, I realized that this night was a turning point. No longer was crossdressing a private exploration. It had become a high-stakes performance, a delicate dance of identity, desire, and courage. Every step, every glance, every whisper of the wind against the fabric of my clothes was a reminder that the transformation I had begun in secrecy was now alive, bold, and unavoidable. The neon lights of the city blurred as I navigated the crowded streets, every heel clicking against wet pavement like a countdown to disaster. My heart thudded violently in my chest, every glance from passers-by amplified, every shadow a potential threat. I had survived the encounter with the teenagers, but I knew instinctively that the night had not yet revealed its full danger. As we turned down a narrower street, the unexpected happened. A man stepped out from the shadows, a stranger, but his presence was commanding, his eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my pulse spike. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and moved with a deliberate pace, closing the distance in a few confident strides. I froze, the heels suddenly feeling like treacherous instruments beneath me. The wind tugged at the wig again, threatening to reveal the hours of careful work. "Hey," the man called, his voice deep, curious, yet edged with amusement. "I haven't seen you around here before. What's going on?" His gaze scanned my outfit, the delicate blouse, the skirt, the tights, and the soft waves of my wig, registering the full transformation. My chest tightened, breath caught between fear and the thrill that always followed exposure. Isabella stepped subtly behind me, her presence both protective and provocative. "Careful," she murmured, her tone playful yet warning, as if daring me to maintain composure. My hands gripped the clutch tighter, the weight anchoring me while the heels felt like instruments of precarious balance. Every fiber of my being screamed panic, but every instinct whispered defiance. This was the moment to prove myself, to inhabit the persona I had been building all night. The stranger leaned slightly, squinting, curiosity intensifying. "You're dressed really well." "Not what I expected," he admitted, a mix of admiration and intrigue in his tone. My stomach nodded. One misstep, a misworded phrase, a twitch of the skirt or wig, and the illusion could crumble entirely. I swallowed hard, voice trembling but determined. "It's just a style I'm trying out," I said, attempting casualness while my insides were a storm of adrenaline. Every movement, the tilt of my head, the sway of my hips, the soft adjustment of the blouse, was calculated to maintain poise while masking the rapid thrum of panic beneath. The man's eyes gleamed with intrigue. "Bold choice," he said, stepping closer, his gaze lingering. My pulse spiked. This was no longer a minor obstacle. The stranger represented a real risk of discovery, of judgment, yet within that danger lay a surge of exhilaration. Every element of my transformation, clothing, wig, makeup, was exposed under his scrutinizing gaze, amplifying vulnerability and thrill simultaneously. Isabella's hand brushed mine lightly, grounding me. "You can handle it," she whispered. Her eyes sparkled with challenge, and in that moment, I realized she was pushing me intentionally, daring me to embrace risk fully. My knees trembled slightly, the heels precarious, the wet street adding tension to each step. I focused on controlling my posture, the small sways, the tilt of my head, everything. This was no longer just a transformation of appearance, it was a transformation of courage, daring, and identity. Suddenly, the man laughed lightly, a sound that cut through the tension like a knife. "All right, I see. You're confident, and I like that," he said, stepping back slightly. Relief surged, but it was tempered with the awareness that the night was far from over. The streets, now slick with rain, reflected neon colors like shattered glass, making every movement dramatic, theatrical, and potentially revealing. As he walked away, I exhaled slowly, feeling a tremor of exhilaration and terror. The confrontation had tested everything, my composure, my courage, and the persona I had carefully constructed. Each heel step now felt lighter, more purposeful, as if I had survived a gauntlet that reinforced the duality of vulnerability and power in my new identity. Isabella nudged me gently.
"See?
You can handle being seen, but the real challenge is coming. Are you ready?" The words sent a shiver down my spine. The night had become a labyrinth of suspense, exposure, and self-discovery. Every street corner, every shadow, every passerby held the potential for revelation. I realized that surviving this night wasn't just about physical balance or hiding, it was about embracing fear, desire, and identity in equal measure. I walked on, heels clicking, skirt swishing, clutch in hand, fully aware that the city around me was now both stage and audience. Every step carried risk, every glance was amplified, and every sensation, wind, rain, the brush of fabric, was heightened to an almost unbearable intensity. The heartbreak that had begun this journey had led me here, standing exposed in the neon-lit streets, transformed in appearance and spirit, facing dangers that demanded courage I had never known I possessed. The night stretched ahead, unknown and unpredictable, and I realized that the climax, the moment of ultimate risk, revelation, and transformation was imminent. Every fiber of my being was alert, balancing fear with thrill, vulnerability with audacity. I understood clearly that the next encounter, the next twist could change everything, exposing me, redefining me, or proving the strength of the persona I had embraced fully. The rain had turned heavier, cascading down in sheets that blurred the neon reflections on the streets. My heels slipped slightly on the wet pavement, and I adjusted my balance, clutched tight in my hand. The city had become a stage of chaos and beauty, a perfect backdrop for the transformation I had undergone and the suspense I now faced. Every nerve was electric, every sense heightened, as though the night itself conspired to test me. We turned into a crowded plaza, where a group of people had gathered under umbrellas, laughing and chatting, oblivious to the storm around them. I felt exposed, not just physically, but emotionally. Every eye I imagined on me amplified the vulnerability I carried. Isabella stayed close, her presence both comforting and provocative, guiding me while subtly challenging me to fully inhabit this persona I had claimed. Then it happened, a sudden flash of movement in the crowd. A familiar face emerged, and my stomach dropped. It was my ex-girlfriend, Laura. Her eyes widened as they met mine, and for a split second, everything froze. The heels, the skirt, the blouse, the delicate wig, all of it, was fully exposed in the harsh glare of public recognition. I could feel my heart hammering, threatening to betray every secret I had worked so hard to protect. Alex. Her voice carried a mixture of shock and disbelief, cutting through the noise of the plaza. The word hung in the air, loaded with the weight of shared history, heartbreak, and now a revelation I hadn't anticipated. Panic surged, but alongside it, an unfamiliar thrill, the kind that came with complete exposure, complete vulnerability, and the undeniable power of transformation. Isabella's hand tightened briefly on mine, grounding me. "Stay calm," she whispered, eyes locked onto mine. But I could feel the tension between us, a silent acknowledgement that tonight had become something far beyond playful exploration or daring adventure. It had become a crucible, a test of identity and courage in the face of revelation. Laura stepped closer, curiosity and incredulity warring in her expression. I don't even know what to say," she admitted. Every word, every hesitation, felt like a spotlight on me, illuminating the persona I had created, my vulnerability, and the raw thrill of being seen. The crowd around us seemed to fade into a blur, leaving only the tension between the three of us, the storm, and the neon-lit plaza. I swallowed hard, adjusting the wig and smoothing the blouse. "It's complicated," I said, voice trembling but firm. "But I'm me." The words felt heavier than anything I had said before, carrying both defiance and honesty. For the first time, I realized that the heartbreak that had led me here, the heartbreak that had sparked this transformation, was now entwined with courage and self-expression, the thrill of exposure, and the danger of discovery. Suddenly, a camera flash went off from somewhere in the crowd. Someone was filming or photographing us. The realization hit like a bolt of lightning. My transformation, my vulnerability, my secret, was now potentially public. My pulse spiked, legs trembling slightly in the heels. The clutch felt heavier, the wind harsher, the rain colder. Every instinct screamed panic. Isabella's eyes gleamed with a mix of mischief and challenge. "Looks like your secret might not stay secret for long," she whispered, her tone both teasing and serious. I realized that tonight I was not only confronting exposure, but the full consequences of my transformation. Every step I had taken, every public movement, every daring choice, had led to this moment. I felt a strange mixture of fear, exhilaration, and defiance. The skirt clung to my legs, the wig shifted slightly in the wind, and the makeup on my face gleamed under the neon lights. I was exposed, yes, but I was also alive in a way that Alex had never been. The heartbreak, the secrecy, the fear, all had led me to this precarious, electric edge. Lara's eyes softened slightly, a flicker of understanding passing over her features, but the tension remained. I don't know what to do, she murmured. This is different. Her uncertainty mirrored my own, a mix of fear, curiosity, and unspoken questions. And then the crowd shifted, murmurs rising around us, the storm blending with the neon reflections on wet pavement. The camera flashed again. The moment had reached a precarious, explosive peak. I could feel the city holding its breath with me, the heels on the wet pavement trembling beneath me, the skirt and wig of fragile armor against exposure. I glanced at Isabella, whose eyes sparkled with challenge. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. I nodded, breath hitching. The thrill, the danger, the exposure, all combined into a single, undeniable reality. This was the night that would define the transformation, the moment where heartbreak had truly turned me into someone new, someone daring, vulnerable, and alive. As the rain fell harder, the neon lights danced across the puddles at my feet, and the crowd murmured around us, I realized my life had changed forever. And yet, the ultimate question remained. Would I survive this exposure unscathed, or had the thrill of transformation brought me to a point of no return? The camera flashed once more, capturing everything: the heels, the skirt, the wig, the trembling clutch, the fear and exhilaration in my eyes. And then the scene froze, the moment suspended in time, leaving only uncertainty, suspense, and the promise of what was yet to come. The rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle, leaving the neon-lit streets glistening like liquid glass. My heels clicked softly against the wet pavement, each step echoing the tension that still pulsed through me. I clutched the bag tightly, aware of the camera flash moments ago and of Lara's bewildered eyes that had seen me in full transformation. My chest heaved, a mixture of fear, excitement, and exhilaration that left me dizzy yet alive. Isabella stayed close, her presence a steadying force amidst the chaos. She leaned in, whispering, "You handled tonight better than I ever imagined. But the night isn't over. Do you want it to be?" I swallowed hard, my voice barely audible. I don't know. Everything's so exposed." She smiled knowingly, a hint of mischief dancing in her eyes. "Exposure isn't just danger. It's freedom, too. You've embraced a part of yourself that Alex never dared to show. But people have seen. Someone might follow, someone might record, or maybe even recognize you later." The thought made my stomach knot. Every risk I had taken, every public movement, every brave step in heels and skirt had led to this fragile tipping point. The heartbreak that had ignited this transformation now seemed distant, replaced by something far more intense: the thrill of vulnerability and the fear of consequences. We walked further, each step resonating with uncertainty. The city was alive, indifferent to our personal drama, yet somehow amplifying it. Reflections in puddles mirrored a dual identity I wasn't sure I could fully reconcile: Alex and the woman I had become in secret. I felt a tremor of doubt. Was this a temporary thrill, or had the heartbreak transformed me permanently? The line between persona and self blurred. Then, a ping from my phone jolted me. A notification flashed across the screen. Someone had tagged a video from the plaza earlier. My heart froze. The camera flash, Lara's presence, the strangers around us. All of it had been recorded. The evidence of my transformation was now potentially public, floating in the digital world where exposure had consequences far beyond what I could control. I looked at Isabella, panic and hope mingling in my chest. "It's out, someone has it," I whispered. She examined my face carefully, her expression a mixture of challenge and curiosity. "Maybe," she said softly. "Or maybe it hasn't gone further yet. You've faced everything tonight: fear, embarrassment, scrutiny. Now it's just the unknown that waits." The plaza around us was nearly empty now, the storm fading, leaving a quiet tension. I felt drained, yet alive. The thrill, the panic, the exposure, all had shifted something fundamental inside me. I realized that crossdressing had been more than an experiment. It was a declaration, a confrontation with identity, a challenge to fear, and a surrender to exhilaration. Laura stepped closer once more, her expression torn. I don't know what to say, but you look powerful and different. I can't explain it. The words were heavy, carrying shock, awe, and an unspoken recognition of the courage it took to show oneself completely to the world. My pulse raced. Would this be a beginning or a disaster? The uncertainty clawed at me. Isabella brushed a wet strand of hair from my face, the gesture intimate, grounding, and teasing all at once. Tonight is just the start, she whispered. People have seen. Your secret is no longer just yours. But maybe that's exactly what you need, to see who you really are when the world is watching. I took a shaky breath, the wet neon streets reflecting 1,000 possibilities. Part of me wanted to flee, to retreat into privacy and reclaim the life I had known. Another part, the part that had felt every thrill, every daring heartbeat of the evening, wanted to stay exposed, to embrace the persona that had emerged stronger, more daring, and undeniably alive. The screen of my phone blinked again. Another notification. A comment, a like, a share, something, anything from the Plaza recording. My heart thumped violently. The story wasn't over. The public, the exposure, the challenge of identity, it was all still unfolding, threatening to explode or elevate me in ways I could not predict. I looked at Isabella, who only smiled, eyes sparkling with the unspoken question. Are you ready for the consequences? I nodded, unsure if I was ready, but aware that there was no going back. The heartbreak had transformed me. Tonight had revealed who I truly could be. And yet, the unknown loomed ahead, suspense hanging over every step, every glance, every heartbeat. As the neon lights reflected off the puddles at my feet and the drizzle whispered against my wig and blouse, I realized that life had changed forever. The night had taken everything familiar, fear, heartbreak, secrecy, and molded it into something daring, exposed, and electrifying. My heels clicked again, faster now, as though racing toward fate itself, and the screen of my phone glowed once more. The cliffhanger hung over me like the last drop of rain, unresolved, terrifying, and intoxicating. Would my secret survive? Would the world see me as Alex, or as the woman I had become? And most importantly, could I face the consequences and still embrace the transformation fully? The screen flashed one final time, an incoming call from an unknown number. My heart skipped. Isabella leaned closer, whispering softly, "Your next challenge is here. Are you ready?" I stared at the phone, breath caught, heels trembling, skirt clinging, and heart racing. The answer was unclear, but the night had already changed me. And with that uncertainty, the story paused, leaving the world suspended, viewers holding their breath, and me standing at the edge of a transformation that had only just begun.